You need to be honest with me, and if you're involved in anything that I'm about ready to tell you, then you need to tell me, okay? Your mom's dead, okay? Your mom's passed away. What I want to ask you, did you have involvement in this?
No.
This is 19-year-old Gypsy Rose. 7 hours before this was recorded, Gypsy lived a happy life with her mom, Dee Dee, in Springfield, Missouri. From the moment she was born, she was diagnosed with several serious illnesses. Unable to care for herself, she relied entirely on her mother, who helped her with everything she needed. With such dedication to her sick child, many considered her mother a hero.
Oh my goodness, what an incredible mother this is, taking on this challenge.
You're the reason I was born, to be your mama.
But it was all a big lie. As it would turn out, Gypsy wasn't sick at all.
There were the feeding tubes, the scars, countless prescriptions. All of it was a lie.
The perfect example of how things on the surface are not what they appear.
I just never would see that that little girl really wasn't who she was supposed to be.
In 2015, the small community of Aurora is forever shaken. And what happened to Gypsy and her mother will uncover one of the most disturbing child abuses the whole country has ever seen.
This is a tragic event surrounded by mystery and public deception.
I'm sorry that I lied to you from the beginning. I'll tell you the truth all now.
A desperate search right now for a mother and daughter who vanished from their home. 48-year-old Dee Dee and 19-year-old Gypsy Blanchard both have medical issues, and neither has been seen since last week.
On June 14th, 2015, friends and neighbors of Dee Dee and Gypsy Blanchard come across a chilling post on Dee Dee's Facebook page. It simply states, "The bitch is dead." At first, they assume it's a cruel joke or that someone has hacked the account. But moments later, another post appears, this one even more disturbing.
I fucking slashed that fat pig and r***ed her sweet innocent daughter. Her scream was so fucking loud, LOL.
Alarmed, they waste no time and rush to the Blanchard home. When they arrive, no one answers the door. But inside, through the windows, they spot all three of Gypsy's wheelchairs, completely untouched. Growing concerned, they contact the authorities.
We had never seen Gypsy not in a wheelchair. So the fact that they were not home and the three wheelchairs were still there was completely wrong to me. That was my panic moment.
When the police show up for a routine wellness check on the family, they stumble upon a horrifying scene. Inside the house, they discover Dee Dee viciously stabbed, but no signs of her daughter.
48-year-old Dee Dee Blanchard was found dead inside her home, and her 19-year-old daughter Gypsy is still considered missing.
Dee Dee's in bed. It was absolutely a brutal death, 14 stab wounds to the back. That's usually a crime of passion. So we knew there was some connection, but we had no idea what it is.
So now what started off as an endangered persons advisory has turned into a homicide investigation.
With Dee Dee dead and Gypsy nowhere in sight, the police grow increasingly worried. The possibility that Gypsy has been kidnapped by her mother's murderer sends a wave of urgency through the department. Determined to find her, the officers swarm the crime scene, piecing together clues in a race against time to find Gypsy before it's too late.
Everybody was looking for Gypsy Rose and wanted her to be home safe, so the whole community was panicked. What if this is not a single incident? What if we have a killer out roaming in our community? If they will kill this lovely woman and abduct her handicapped child, what are they capable of?
Gypsy's close friend, Aaliyah, brings up a surprising detail to the police. Gypsy has secretly been talking to a young man without her mother knowing. His name is Nicholas Godejohn, and she was seriously thinking about marrying him. The two first connected through a Christian dating website, but Nick isn't really the person Gypsy thinks he is.
Once we started peeling back his background and his history, looking at some of his communication, he was very dark. Very dark.
After spending hours piecing together clues, the authorities finally make a crucial discovery. By analyzing online activity linked to a Facebook post, they trace the digital trail nearly 500 miles away. Their search leads them beyond Waukesha, Wisconsin, straight to the doorstep of Nicholas Godejohn.
So they went out, and there was actually a standoff between Nicholas and the police for a brief moment. He was brandishing a knife and waving it around, and he didn't want to come out.
No one is certain whether Gypsy is even alive. If she is, many believe she must be trapped, possibly held against her will by Nick. But as they step inside the house, the truth reveals itself. Gypsy Rose is there, alive. And more shocking than anything, she's willingly there. At this point, the police find out that they're actually in the relationship. Immediately, both of them are taken into custody for further interrogation. That's when detectives uncover another disturbing truth about Gypsy.
She's walking. And we were like, where is sweet little Gypsy Rose? Well, how good is she walking? She walks quite well. I want to start off with saying, things are not always as they appear.
Young lady, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, and her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, from Springfield, Missouri, to the stage.
I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hour.
Ever since a young age, everybody believed Gypsy was a teen with several serious illnesses. Or, at least, that's what her mother was telling her.
Gypsy and her multiple illnesses and diseases. She had muscular dystrophy, leukemia. She had learning disabilities, had not been able to be out of a wheelchair. I think everybody felt so much for Gypsy, this poor girl who has so many things wrong with her, and this wonderful mother who does everything for Gypsy.
Over the years, countless friends and neighbors have lent a helping hand to the Blanchard family in various ways, even stepping in with financial support for them. Dee Dee stood out in the community as a devoted mother, always going above and beyond to provide for her daughter.
I told Dee Dee she was the best mother. There's no way I can do what you're doing. You have a sick child, it's constantly 24/7 taking care of her and everything. I mean, I always praised her and told her, good job.
But it was all a lie. And Detective now wants to know whether Gypsy had something to do with her mother's murder.
You need to be honest with me. And if you're involved in anything that I'm about ready to tell you, then you need to tell me, okay? Your mom's dead, okay? Now, what I want to ask you is, your mom's passed away, okay? And she's deceased, all right? Now, what I want to ask you, did you have involvement in this? Okay?
No.
Hang on, listen to me for just a second, okay? I want you to understand something, okay?
Gypsy insists she has nothing to do with her mother's death. Despite her denial, the detective remains unconvinced and keeps pushing for the truth.
Sweetheart, do you really want to dig yourself? You're digging yourself deeper, okay?
No, seriously, I would never hurt her.
Listen to me, okay? I don't play around with that, okay? I'm not gonna play around with this, okay?
I didn't do it.
I always felt like there's just something that she's hiding. She's not forthcoming and truthful at this point.
As the questioning goes on, they uncover the story of how she first connected with Nick after meeting him online. Gypsy longed to see him in person, but she was well aware that her mother would never approve. When she was younger, her mother once locked her inside a backyard shed after discovering she had been secretly chatting with boys on the internet.
In this shed is nothing except for a toddler bed. According to Gypsy, she was told that, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, I'll put you in there and you'll never come out again. Gypsy wanted freedom. She didn't want to be under her mom's thumb anymore.
When the Disney film Cinderella hit theaters, she asked Nick to watch it with her. They made a plan to meet at the cinema, and without her mother noticing, meet outside.
I invited him to come in March to see Cinderella with me. Unfortunately, it hurt my mom's feelings because I paid more attention to him than her.
Okay.
And anyway, she didn't like him from then on.
Just a few rooms away, Gypsy's boyfriend, Nick Godejohn, is waiting for his interview. There, Nick tells the detectives about how Gypsy ended up with him.
Apparently, from what she told me, her mom kicked her out of her house.
Okay.
So she texted me to pick her up.
Okay.
And what happened was I got on the bus about a day later. As soon as I got there, I walked straight to a hotel, and then I let her know that I was at the hotel.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then me and her pretty much stayed inside the hotel for pretty much the entire time.
The investigators press Nick for details, and he confidently explains how he and Gypsy stayed out of sight in a small motel in Springfield. But the team has already pieced together their entire journey. Surveillance cameras captured them at the Greyhound station, blending in like any ordinary pair of tourists. Gypsy, disguised with a wig, kept her head low, letting her hair cover her face. They then approached a taxi driver to take them to the motel.
A young woman walked up and asked, "Could you take us to the Days Inn?" And I said, "Of course." She was in a very dark black hoodie, but she had a very odd looking wig on. It was an old looking Cher wig, which I found very normal. The girl looked 12, sounded 5, and had a 40-year-old attitude, because she was not afraid to tell me off. I just knew there was something wrong.
In the meantime, in the other room, after a number of lies, Gypsy begins telling the other detective what really happened.
But why did Nick hurt her? Now's the time to be truthful, sweetheart. No more lies.
The only reason I could make her is because he wanted me to himself.
Okay.
Because my mom kept on getting in the way of us being together.
Sure she did. She didn't like Nick. She didn't want her little baby girl to grow up. She wanted to keep her little baby girl young, didn't she?
Gypsy insists that she never wanted anything bad to happen to her mother. It's all because of Nick. She confesses that he is the one who killed her mother. The detective, remaining calm and patient, listens carefully, making sure she shares every detail. As she continues, Gypsy describes how she secretly let Nick into the house that night, slipping him a knife she had taken earlier from a store.
And I got up to use the restroom. And at that point, he had put me in the bathroom and he had locked the door.
Okay.
And he went to my mom's room and I heard her cry and heard him scream for my name.
You heard your mom crying. You heard your mom crying. And you heard your mom calling out your name.
And I screamed.
She was screaming. Can you describe her screaming to me? No, that's an awkward question.
Startled.
Okay.
And then she kept screaming louder and louder. And then she had said, "Gypsy, Gypsy." I think I knew what he was doing.
At that point, you knew what he was doing?
I knew what he was doing.
And your mom was hollering at you for you?
But I was too afraid to go because I was afraid he'd do the same to me.
Following this, Gypsy goes on to recount what happened right after Nick took her mother's life. She explains that Nick led her into her bedroom and instructed her to clear the stuffed animals off the bed. Once she did, he moved closer and forced himself on her. Meanwhile, the detective captures photos of the marks on her body, which she claims are from the assault. However, he isn't entirely convinced. Something about her story doesn't add up, and he begins to question whether she is revealing the whole truth.
She's calculating, she is manipulative, and these are all things that are created by what her mother taught her and did.
Keeping this in mind, he looks at her once more and asks if she had any part in it or had any idea about what Nick was planning.
So did you kill your mom?
No, sir.
Did you help
No, sir.
Nicholas kill your mom?
No, sir. No, sir.
Did you have knowledge that Nicholas was going to kill your mom before he did it?
Yes, sir.
Armed with these fresh details and Gypsy's clear statement that Nick is responsible for Dee Dee's death, the investigators choose to bring him back for another round of questioning.
But I'll tell you right now, Gypsy did tell me everything. She told us everything. She told us about you coming there, that she told us what happened to Mom. She told us about your guys' relationship. She told us about the cleanup. She told us about all of that. Okay? So, do you want to do the right thing by Gypsy if you love her?
Well, the truth is I worship her, so
I know you
there's
do.
no way I wouldn't do it on
I know.
a thing for her.
Can you tell me this first? Did Gypsy know that you were going to kill her mother?
Honestly, she asked me to.
Okay. So Gypsy knew you were going to do it because Gypsy asked you to.
Yes.
Why did she ask you to do that?
Because she felt it was her only way to be with me.
Okay.
Finally, Nick admits that he is the one who murdered Gypsy's mother, though he quickly adds that Gypsy had a role in it too. In fact, she came up with the idea herself, believing it was the only way she could live a free life. According to him, several different identities live within him, but it's the darkest one, a sinister figure named Victor, who carried out the terrible act. Nick insists that Victor is a 500 years old vampire who enjoys killing.
You just got angry.
More than one person inside me. There's actually multiple personalities of myself.
Have you been diagnosed with that?
I probably should be diagnosed with it because it happens. The thing is, I used to take medication because I used to hear voices in my head.
Right.
After this, Nick reveals something even more unbelievable. Right before they hopped on the bus to leave town, they handled the weapon used in the crime in a way no one would ever expect.
I've never heard of somebody thinking the way to get rid of evidence is to put a bloody knife into the mail and mail it to yourself. Never.
Everyone was outraged.
You go back to the newsroom and it's just chaos. Okay, this story has completely done a 180.
But why would Gypsy want to kill her mother in the first place? It all started when Gypsy was born.
Right from birth, 3 months old, Dee Dee was telling me that she had sleep apnea, and she needed a breathing machine or breathing monitor machine. It escalated from then. Problems with her eyes, hearing, her digestive system.
Dee Dee constantly insisted to Gypsy's father that her health was going downhill faster than anyone expected. Over time, she claimed Gypsy's legs were getting too weak to hold her up, and that she wouldn't even make it to her 18th birthday. Not long after, doctors inserted a feeding tube into Gypsy's stomach, and Dee Dee seemed determined to freeze Gypsy in a much younger stage of life, treating her more like a little child than the teenager she actually was.
I called her for her 18th birthday, and Dee Dee said, "Don't tell her she's 18, you know." I'm like, "What you mean don't tell her she's 18? She said, "No, she's 18, it's her 18th birthday." But she don't know she's 18, she's, you know. I thought it was weird, you know.
Dee Dee was arguably one of the greatest con people I will probably ever see or hear.
Deceiving local charities, deceiving businesses.
It's not clear what Dee Dee's full plan looked like, but one thing is certain. She was determined to keep Gypsy by her side forever. Dee Dee held a powerful need to direct every part of her daughter's life, all while crafting the image of a fearless, devoted mother who will stop at nothing to care for her sick child. In psychology, experts know this as Munchausen by proxy. This describes a situation where a caregiver, often a mother, pretends that the person they are caring for, usually their child, is sick, even though they are healthy.
And her goal is some kind of emotional gratification, looking for sympathy, attention, care, concern that she feels unable to get in any other way. It is a form of child abuse, first and foremost.
Along the way, she tricked kind-hearted locals and generous charities into believing Gypsy needed constant medical help, collecting donations meant to save a life in danger. But the one who suffered the most was her daughter.
I was on breathing medication for seizures, medication to help go to the bathroom, pain medication, anxiety medication, just everything. I would have to put on the breathing machine every night. I hated it though because it seemed to make my breathing worse, not better.
At the age of 14, she visited a pediatric neurologist in Springfield, Missouri. Her mother claimed that Gypsy needed a wheelchair because of muscular dystrophy. The doctor carefully performed several tests, but none of the results pointed to that condition. Instead, he explained that the earlier diagnosis didn't match her disability.
There was nothing there to support either. That kind of made me very suspicious, but the mother was not happy with that. And when she left the office in a storm and told my nurses that I don't know what I'm talking about and that she's not coming back.
Dee Dee was constantly outsmarting the doctors. She always waited a few weeks after Gypsy saw them, then requested copies of the medical records herself. If she spotted even the slightest hint that a doctor started asking too many questions, she quickly switched to someone new. The pediatric neurologist decided not to contact the authorities after Dee Dee stormed out with her daughter. But he talked to Gypsy's main doctor about his doubts, and he also noticed something strange.
As I begin to look at all these diagnoses and the documents with the wrong birth dates, I called the Missouri Department of Family Services, and I said, I am concerned this child has been kidnapped.
In 2009, the police carried out an inspection following the doctor's warning, but after that, nothing else happened.
I'd say, I'm sorry I failed you. That's what I would say. I'm really sorry.
And so, Gypsy's horror story continued with other doctors.
My mother was so good at manipulation. She was so good at working it. But what I don't understand is the test results came back normal. When the doctors were looking at these results, how come they didn't report anything then?
Gypsy fully understood that her mother wouldn't let her just leave her. She made several attempts to escape, yet none of them were successful. The first time she sneaked out, she did it with a boy she met at a science fiction convention. She confided in him about her life at home, and he quickly offered her a place to stay. The very next day, she got a ride from a stranger and went to his house. But within only a few hours, Dee Dee tracked her down and dragged her back.
So she was starting to call the cops on him. And she took me back home and smashed my computer with a hammer, smashed my cell phone with a hammer, and said, if you ever try to do that again, I'm gonna smash your fingers with a hammer. It was a rough year. I call that the bad times.
Right after this moment, Dee Dee grabbed a dog leash, snapped it onto a set of handcuffs, and locked those cuffs right to the bed frame, leaving her stuck there for a full 2 weeks. Not long after, Dee Dee talked a lawyer into writing up official documents that declared she wasn't able to take care of herself.
So I thought if I had tried to go to the police, they'd look at these papers and say, she's retarded. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
By then, Gypsy believed no one stood by her side. She blamed the doctors who missed the warning signs, the officers, and the lawyers who ignored what was right before their eyes. When she found Nick on a faith-based dating site, the two quickly realized they couldn't imagine life apart. That's when they came up with a dangerous idea, a way to get rid of her mother for good. When the police arrived at the home to inspect Dee Dee's body, the house was a mess. Once they opened one closet in the kitchen, they found it full with medications, top to bottom.
She had even written on several of the bottles of Gypsy's medication as if she was writing it for a child. For the anti-seizure medication, it would say, shaky baby. In every other area of Dee Dee's life, it appeared that she had absolutely no organization or cleanliness, except when it came to these medications.
Once the investigators have carefully examined everything they found at the crime scene and questioned both Gypsy and Nick down at the station, the two of them end up facing serious charges for the death of Dee Dee. Soon enough, their trial starts.
Prosecutors have decided not to seek the death penalty against a Springfield woman and her boyfriend, both of whom are accused of murdering the woman's mother.
The announcement comes after several conversations between the defense and prosecution, both agreeing this was the best decision.
Worried the jury could sympathize with Gypsy after everything she endured from her harsh and controlling mother, the prosecutors choose to offer her a deal. In the end, she admits guilt to a lesser charge, second-degree murder, and receives a 10-year prison sentence with a chance to be released on parole within only a few years. Even so, the prosecutors decide they won't go easy on her boyfriend. For the case to succeed, prosecutors needed to prove that Nick could think for himself, regardless of his autism, and that killing Dee Dee was a choice he made willingly.
He had two thoughts.
a benevolent thought that he described as an angel on one shoulder that said, just take Gypsy and run, and a malevolent thought, a devil on the other shoulder that said, the is dead. Yes, this was Gypsy's idea, but the defendant on June 10th was ready to kill.
I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him. And just that somebody could do something so heartless and not express remorse.
On the other hand, the defense works hard to paint him as someone struggling with his own mind. Gypsy is soon called to the witness stand, ready to face a series of questions.
Whose idea was it to kill your mother?
Mine.
Why did you want to kill your mother?
Because I wanted to be free of her hold on me.
Gypsy confesses that she paid for everything, from bus tickets to cheap roadside motels, and even the weapon itself, a knife swiped straight from a store shelf. She openly revealed that she wrote the chilling Facebook posts, hoping they would lead police right to her mother's body.
Nick was happy to do whatever Gypsy wanted. He was always compliant. You're going to hear testimony about Nick's autism. He has a low IQ. He suffers cognitive disabilities. And in the end, folks, you're going to understand the dynamics of this case, that Nick wasn't able to formulate the necessary mental state to commit murder in the first degree.
But everything changes once the jury is shown the footage of Nick's questioning. In that recording, he admits to stabbing Dee Dee without holding anything back. His lawyers argue that the investigator exploited Nick's struggles connected to being on the autism spectrum, though the investigator insists she didn't know about his diagnosis and saw nothing unusual that would have made her aware. In the end, after a couple of hours of deliberation, the jury reaches the decision.
As to count one, we, the jury, find the defendant, Nicholas Godejohn, guilty of murder in the first degree. We assess and declare the punishment for murder in the first degree at imprisonment for life without the possibility of probation or parole.
In February 2019, Nick is sentenced to life in prison for the murder conviction. In the end, Gypsy recounts all the events, describing the moment her mother was killed.
I was scared, I was shaking. I didn't have a thought in my brain. It was like it was all not real. I was on a bunch of medications, and I know that's no excuse, but on Xanax, I felt like I had no emotion, and I wasn't thinking right. In so many ways, I don't know what's right, what's wrong, but to say that, yes, I did this, I'm sorry for it, I feel bad for it, it just feels good to be honest.